Hello everybody, this is Jack Dennis. Welcome to our fly fishing channel and welcome to a new year. Boy, if anything, I'm happy to see 2020 go bye-bye. Good riddance. But we had some memorable times, a visit to Yellowstone with hardly any people, some pretty darn good fishing this summer with my grandchildren and daughter, and I'm just excited to say hello 2021, and let's get to be thinking about some other fishing.
I first met Mike Lawson. He was fishing knee-deep in the Henry's Fork, in the middle of a green drake hatch. Everybody else wasn't catching anything, but Mike was catching fish after fish. I waded up to him and asked him what he was using. He showed me his green drake paradrake. Now let's let him show us how to tie it.
I'd like to tie a larger mayfly imitation now called a paradrake. We use no-hackle flies to imitate mayfly duns that are smaller than size 12. And this paradrake works great when you're imitating larger mayflies. And the one I'd like to tie today is the green drake. Now what I like to use when I'm tying a green drake is I use a little bit of monofilament. We're going to tie this fly completely out of elk hair. And if we put a little bit of monofilament on there, it will act as a core to the fly, and it will add durability and make it a little easier for us to tie the hair on. And then I'd like to tie the tail. For the tail, we will use some moose hair fibers. I think you could use about any kind of tailing material, but moose works very well because it's stiff and it's very durable. And we'll stack a little bit of this. Now we're only going to use 3 fibers for the tail, but we'll tie more than that on, and then we'll clip those we don't need out later. And lay the tails on there. About twice the length of the hook shank is what I think is about the correct tail length. It's really not that important, I don't think. We'll tie these fibers in, and then we will tie on the wing. Take the thread and anchor it right in the middle of the hook shank. And for the wing, I'm going to use some dark elk hair. Now I've decided to use pure black hair so that you can see it a little better. But what you want to do is, when you're tying your own flies, is use the color of hair that will match the wing of the natural insect. On the green drake, I would use a medium gray, and if it were a brown drake, I would go ahead and use a mottled natural brown elk hair. We'll stack this hair and now when all the tips are even, we will tie this hair wing forward. Measure for the height of the wing about the same length as the hook shank. Make a couple of turns of thread all the way around the hair and then tighten. Then tighten a little more and a little more as you bring the thread around the wing. Do that about 5 times, and then clip the hair as close as you can get it. And then we'll cover this up where we clip the hair off. Now we're going to stand this wing up. Hold it up and bring the thread in front of it and start winding the thread back into the wing as tight as you can. Now there's our wing standing upright. Now I like to bunch the hair together a little bit by bringing the thread all the way around the base of the wing about 2 or 3 times. And there's our wing. Now take the thread forward and wind it right up almost to the eye of the hook. Leave a little bit of room for the head. Now what we're going to use for the body is a dyed green elk hair. It's kind of a dark olive green. And once again, you want to use the hair that's the color of the body of the natural insect. And I'm separating all of the shorter hairs and the fuzzy material that you find in elk hair out, using just the longer hair fibers. Now take the butt part, or the thicker part of the hair, and we'll tie it facing forward, right in front of the wing. Lay it forward, make a couple of turns, and then tighten down. Tighten a little more, and keep tightening as you bring the thread around this hair so that it's in nice and snug. Then you want to clip the remainder of this hair right in front of the wing. You'll have to get your scissor points right down in there in front of this wing. Now the next thing that we need to do is move the thread back, winding as you go, right in front of the wing, and now we're going to pull this hair around the body, around the shank of the hook, to form the body. And I usually like to separate it into two parts. I'm going to grab the hair, about half of it, and hold it on this side of the hook, and then take the rest of it and hold it on the other side. And this can get a little tricky, handling this hair. And I like to form just a little cup with my fingers and my thumb and push this hair back like this. And some of this hair, if you don't get it all, don't worry about it. You can clip out any hair that's out of place. And I can see we've got a couple of fibers that aren't exactly where we want them. Now take your thread and make a complete turn around this hair in front of the wing and tighten. Now we're going to progress back down the body, tightening as we go with the thread. And this is going to form a segmented effect to the body of the fly, just like the natural. When you get back to the bend of the hook, then we're going to continue on and make an extended body. So you'll need to bring the thread around behind the shank of the hook, and I just use my little finger and continue on. We'll wind around and just keep moving back. Okay, now we've formed an extended body, and I like the extended part to be about half the total length of the hook shank. When you've completed that, make about 3 tight turns of thread, and then we'll start back forward again, following the same procedure, tightening as we go. Now we've got back to the bend of the hook, so now we'll bring the thread ahead on the hook shank and keep winding forward. Now bring it right in front of the wing and wind twice around the hook shank. Now we have formed the body of the fly. We've got a bunch of hair sticking out here at the tail, and what I'd like to do now is clip all this hair out that we don't need. I can see the black mousse fibers, so I'm going to hold on to some of those and clip this and the monofilament out of the way. You're just going to have to look in there real carefully and select what you want to leave as tails. Now I can see the moose fibers in there, and I want to be real careful at this point not to cut the moose. We're going to leave 3 tails in there. I think that we're going to be fishing to intelligent fish that can count. So we want to make sure we've got 3. If you don't have 3, then you'll have to fish for the dumber fish. Okay, there we've got our 3 tail fibers. And now we have one final step, and that's to put the hackle on. We're going to use a parachute hackle. I'm going to use this green saddle hackle, and I'm going to just take 1 feather. Now this really, for the green drake, isn't really a green, it's kind of a bright chartreuse, and I like it because it really gives the fly a lot of contrast. I'm going to try to select a hackle that's about the right size, a number 10. And then clip it down, get the web clipped out of it. And lay this hackle right in front of the wing and wrap over it a couple of times very tightly. You don't want this hackle to slip out. And then we'll wind this hackle around the wing in a parachute style. When I wind hackle parachute, I like to make sure to wind it counterclockwise so that the thread will help tighten it down instead of loosen it. Then we'll just wrap around, and I like to go about 4 or 5 times on a fly this large. And this hackle will really not float the fly, but it will help to stabilize it and keep the fly standing upright. Now we've gone around, we're going to tie this down. Hold the hackle out of the way with your finger and thumb, and then wrap around 2 or 3 times very tightly. Then you can clip the remainder of the tip of the hackle out. Now there'll be some little strands or little fibers of hackle that you can clip out of here later. The next step we need to do is to whip finish the fly. I like this Mattarelli whip finisher because it's easy to lay the whip finish anywhere that you want. I'm holding the hackle out of the way and laying these whip finishes right over each other in front of the wing. Then tighten it down. Now the last thing we want to do is to put some cement on this fly, and it's really important. There's 2 areas where we want this cement to go. First of all, let's put some right back at the tail because we clipped all that hair and the thread is holding it all together right there. And then we want to put another drop of cement right up where we tied the hackle off. And just let it run right back under the wing there. Now when I tied the fly off, there were some little hackle fibers sticking out. So go ahead and inspect the fly and get any adjustments that you want to make. And I found the best way to do this is put it in your hackle pliers. Then you can turn this fly any way that you want, and you can see the little fibers that are sticking out. So I'm going to take right now and clip these out. You know, I don't think the fish care too much about this hackle sticking out. In fact, it seems like our flies work better after the fish have torn them up a little bit. But There's just a little matter of pride there. You want to have your flies look neat just for you, even if it isn't important to the fish. So there's our green drake. It's the most famous hatch on the Henry's Fork. And there are lots of large mayflies that hatch throughout the world, and that's the pattern